Molly learns a lesson, a school story. This is one of the American Girls collection, and it's from the year 1944. 8 times 7. Chapter 1, 8 times 7. Molly McIntyre loved to look at her teacher, Miss Campbell. Miss Campbell's hair was brown and so smooth and shiny it reminded Molly of dark polished wood. Most of the time, Miss Campbell wore her hair pinned on top of her head in a soft roll, but sometimes, like today, she wore it down in a page boy. Her long, glossy curls just brushed her shoulders and swung like a dancer's skirt when she turned her head quickly. Molly touched the ends of her own hair. Sticks, she thought. My hair is as straight as sticks. When Molly grew up, she wanted her hair to look just like Mrs. Campbell's, but it had a long way to go. Today, Miss Campbell was wearing a bright red sweater, exactly the color of 6 red geraniums that stood saluting the sun in the windowsill. Miss Campbell sat up straight at the piano stool and sang along with the class in a clear, firm voice. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Then she smiled at the class. Excellent. Now let's get to work. We have a great deal to do today. Molly watched Miss Campbell write things to do today on the blackboard. When some teachers wrote that, it looked like a scold or a heading to a long list of tiresome tasks. But when Miss Campbell wrote it in round, even letters, it looked like a challenge. Wake up, sharpen your pencils, the day is beginning. Miss Campbell expected her third graders to be on their toes. She often said, School is your war duty. Being a good student is as important as being a good soldier, Miss Campbell wrote. Geography. Howie Munson began waving his hand wildly as if he were drowning at sea and Miss Campbell were the rescue ship. Yes, Howard, Miss Campbell said. Howie stood up next to his desk. Miss Campbell, ma'am, don't forget. Yesterday you said we could have a multiplication bee. Molly groaned to herself. Howie said multiplication bee as if it would be a big treat like cupcakes for lunch. Molly absolutely hated multiplication bees. They made her so nervous she forgot problems she knew by heart, even the easy ones like 2 times 2. She hid her hands in her lap and crossed her fingers. Please let her say no, she prayed. But Miss Campbell was laughing. You're right, Howard. We will have a multiplication contest today. I have a big gold badge for the student who wins the contest, too. I bet it will be me, Miss Campbell, said Howie. I know 'em all. Just ask me anything. We'll see, Howard, said Miss Campbell, but right now, please be seated. Howie sat down at his desk. He was so excited he raised his clenched fist above his head like a prize fighter. Howard, said Miss Campbell firmly, please save your celebration until after the contest. Howie sat right behind Molly. There were 21 students in Molly's class, 10 girls and 11 boys. They were seated in alphabetical order at desks arranged in 4 straight rows. Molly sat at the middle desk in the 3rd row in back of Grace Littlefield, the new girl who was as quiet as a mouse. Molly's 2 best friends, Linda and Susan, were also in Miss Campbell's class. The classroom was large and square, smelling of chalk dust, books, and turtle food. It was painted pale green, with a high ceiling and shiny wooden floors. Along one wall above the bookshelves there were windows. They were tall windows, twice as tall as Molly. It was quite a job to open them at the top. You had to pull them down with a long pole that had a metal knob at the end. It was tricky to fit the knob into the hole all the way at the top of the window, and you had to be strong because the pole was heavy. Then you had to pull on it with your weight to make the window open even a crack. Being asked to open the top window was an honor which Miss Campbell gave to everyone in turn. It didn't matter how big you were or how well you had managed the job in the past. Everyone got a chance, fair and square. Her fairness was one of the things everyone liked about Miss Campbell. Miss Campbell's desk was in the front of the room, right under the flag. So there's one of the windows. but she hardly ever sat at it. She walked around the room as she talked, or stood by the bookshelves or the blackboard, the piano, or the student's desk. Molly loved it when Miss Campbell stopped at her desk. She smelled like peppermints. Up close, her hands were smooth, square, and small. They were very neat and tidy, just like Miss Campbell. When Miss Campbell explained things like nouns and verbs, and when I comes before E, she made them seem neat and tidy too. With Miss Campbell leading the way, the school day marched along smoothly from the first song of the day to the last dismissal bell. Right now, Miss Campbell was standing in the front of the room by the maps. The maps were rolled up on poles like window shades. Molly loved it when Miss Campbell pulled down one of the maps. The sun would catch a ring on her hand and send rainbows of light dancing on the walls. Susan, Linda, and Molly spent a lot of time discussing that ring. Susan thought it was an engagement ring and that Miss Campbell was engaged to marry a soldier who was off fighting the war. Linda said no one knew for sure if that was true or not. Molly hoped very much that it was. She hoped that Miss Campbell's soldier would come home soon and Miss Campbell could ask Molly to be flower girl in her wedding. Molly would carry a little basket of flower petals, or maybe she'd hold a train of Miss Campbell's wedding dress. Any day now Miss Campbell would come and ask her, "Molly? Molly?" Molly sat up straight at her desk. Miss Campbell was asking her something, but it wasn't about flower petals. "Molly, was your mind a million miles away? Perhaps while you're bringing it back to our classroom, someone else can tell us the name of the capital city of England. Grace, can you help us?" "London," squeaked Grace, proud to know the answer. Thought Molly. Everybody knows that. "That's right, Grace," Miss Campbell said. On the map she pointed to London with her long rubber-tipped pointer. "And who can tell me why it's important for us to know about England and London?" Molly shot her hand up before anyone else. Molly stood next to her desk to answer. "Because of the war. America and England are fighting together in a war against Germany. We're helping England. I know because my father's there working in a hospital. The Germans are bombing England and my father is taking care of soldiers who get hurt in battles." Molly stopped talking and sat down. She didn't really like to talk about her father being in England. It made her remember that he was in danger and very, very far away. Sometimes she worried that he might get hurt by a German bomb. She looked at the map. The ocean between America and England looked awfully big, and England looked awfully small and not very safe. And it was so little in such a big ocean, so near Germany and so far from home. Miss Campbell smiled at Molly. "Very good, Molly. Thank you for telling the class about your father. You must be very proud of him." She turned to the blackboard. "Molly's right. The United States and England are allies. That means they work together to beat Germany." Miss Campbell wrote on the board, "Allies, people who work together for the same goal." "America is cooperating with England because we hope we can get the job of winning the war done faster if we help each other," Miss Campbell said. Now, for next Tuesday, I'd like you to write 3 paragraphs about cooperation and why it's a good idea for people to work together. Tell how allies can help each other. Remember to indent at the beginning of every new paragraph. Use whole sentences, periods, and capitals. Woody Halsey raised his hand. "Does spelling count?" he asked. "Yes, Woody, spelling counts," said Miss Campbell. "Use a dictionary. Be as careful as you can be. And speaking of bees, it's time for the multiplication bee. Line up quietly." Howie Munson was the first one out of his seat. "Boys against the girls," he blurted out. "Let's calm down, please, Howard. Boys, line up by the windows. Girls, line up by the door. Woody, there will be no pushing in line, please." Everyone chattered happily as the teams rushed to line up. Molly walked over to the girls' line and stood at the very end. "Maybe I could step back into the cloakroom and hide," she thought. "Maybe no one would miss me." 9 times 6, Miss Campbell said, and the race was on. Molly's stomach felt as if it were full of sloshing water. "Maybe I'll throw up," she thought. 7 times 7, 49. 4 times 8, 32. Hardly anyone waited even a second. Molly wondered how people could slap those answers down so quickly. She leaned against the bulletin board and had a display of planets on it. "I wish I were on another planet right now," she thought. "I bet no one on Mars cares about multiplication." The girl behind Molly gave her a little shove. "Move up," she said. "You're right after Susan." "I wish I were on another planet," thought Molly. Molly gulped. Susan was next. "Maybe we'll have a fire drill," Molly thought. 44, said Susan smoothly, and all the girls clapped and patted her on the back as she walked to the end of the line. 9 times 12. Woody Halsey squinted at the ceiling. 108, he said. "Okay," said the other boys. "Good going, Woody." Now it was Molly's turn. 8 times 7. Molly froze. The eights. Her worst. She hated the eights. 8 times 7, Miss Campbell repeated. Molly closed her eyes. 8 times 7. 8 times 7. Probably in the 50s somewhere, she thought. 59. Molly offered timidly. She thought she was probably wrong. Sure enough, all the girls groaned. Howie jumped out of line and yelled, 56, 56. 8 times 7 is 56. "Why, Molly," said Miss Campbell, "I think you need a little more practice with the multiplication flashcards. You'd better review your eights until you know them." Molly didn't say anything. She walked to her desk and sat down stiff with shame. The multiplication contest went on around her. Questions and answers buzzed back and forth across the room like bees in a hive. Molly wanted to put her fingers in her ears to block out the numbers. 9 times 6. 13 times 3. Nobody else missed a problem for a long time. Then slowly, one by one, others took their seat. Finally, only Hallie and Allison were left. "All right," said Miss Campbell. "One more problem, and whoever answers first is the winner. Ready?" Allison and Howie nodded. 12 times 13. Howie bit his lip and scowled. 156, Allison said calmly. "Hooray, we win!" cried all the girls except Molly. They all ran up to Allison to hug her. Everyone except Molly, even the boys, clapped when Miss Campbell pinned a big, shiny, gold badge on Allison's sweater. "Excellent work, Allison. I'm proud of you." Allison beamed. Molly saw her look down at the gold badge and touch it with her fingers. Molly looked away. She pulled her 3-ring notebook out of her desk and opened it to a blank piece of paper. In big numbers she wrote, 8 times 7 equals 56.